I was 10 that summer, when the river behind our village began to glitter with rain-warmed light, and grandfather's hands moved with a quiet, patient rhythm I would come to trust as mercy. The morning wore the pale gold of early sun, and the air smelled of rain on dust and sweet bread cooling on the sill of Grandma's kitchen. A line of cicadas hummed from the maple trees, and the water by the bank showed little sparks as the sun slid along its surface. Grandfather's old boat, half sunk in the mud beneath the bank, creaked when he hoisted it free, and I followed with a breathless kind of awe, feeling the world widen as if someone had drawn the edges of my heart with a soft, careful finger. He showed me the rod he had carved from a sapling and the spool of line that carried the faint scent of tar and old pine. "First learn the knot," he said, threading the line through his weathered fingers, teaching me the simple overhand that would hold through many small adventures. We waded into the shallow edge, where the pebbles pressed cold into our soles. The water so clear it felt like looking through glass at the life beneath. The air held the quiet of a place where time leans in, closer to listen. On the third cast, a young perch tugged the line, silver and stubborn as a stubborn thought I couldn't shake loose. I felt the thrill rise in my chest, the tug, the little splash. The way the cork bobbed with a stubborn independence. I pulled too hard, tried to force a moment into being, and the fish leaped, glinting in the sun, then slipped free, darting back toward the murmur of shadows where the river kept its secrets. Grandfather's voice was soft, not scolding, but steady. "Watch its eye, lad. When it tires, let it go if it wishes." So I settled the line. The perch drifted within reach again, not to be caught this time, but to be gently nudged back toward the deeper water. The moment felt like a quiet turning of a page I hadn't known I was turning. We stayed in that small harbour of patience for a long minute, hearing only the small sounds of summer, the distant laughter of cousins, a kettle humming on Grandma's stove, the slow lilt of the river sliding past the reeds. "Patience is a kind of courage," Grandfather said, tilting his head to look out over the water. "You'll learn more from waiting than from rushing." He spoke softly, but his words settled in me like a seed. He told stories of the river as a road for those who listened, of past summers where men mended nets and found quiet meaning between the knots and the water's steady push. He spoke of the old days when a man's worth was measured not by what he caught, but by what he let go, what he learned to spare for someone else. We shared bread with cheese and sliced tomato, the crust crackling with a little butter and sun. The scent of warm bread and green herbs rose from the basket, mingling with the river smell, earthy, a touch metallic, alive. The bank smelled of damp soil and rye. The world felt both intimate and infinite, stretched by the sound of boats far away, and the quiet counsel of Grandfather's hands on the rod. As the day wore on, I found that the river was teaching me a language besides fishing. It spoke in the way a friend's hand rests on your shoulder, in the way a neighbour's door opens a crack of light into a day that wasn't supposed to be bright. It spoke in the patient, unhurried rhythm of the knots I learned to tie, in the mercy of releasing what did not belong to me to keep. There was a mercy in letting go, the perch, the moment, even my own eager pride, so the river could have its own slow, honest conclusion. That is how that afternoon became a map of who I would become. I grew up not by collecting trophies, but by learning to listen to the river, to the people in my life, to the small voices that tell you to breathe and wait and choose who you want to be for the next hour or the next lifetime, Grandfather's quiet presence pressed into me like the smooth line of a well-made knot. If I have learned anything worth carrying, it is that mercy is a skill you practice when the world is loud and you want to shout, when you want to claim victory and go home with a chest full of triumphs. Mercy asks you to pause, to consider, to let the other creature, flesh or memory or feeling, have its turn to be seen. Years passed, and the river changed with the weather and the seasons, as rivers do. We moved, we laughed, we failed and tried again. And somewhere in the middle of all that life, I kept returning to Grandfather's lesson. I practiced the quiet art of listening, first to my own breath, then to others, to the soft spill of rain on dust, to the way a kitchen fills with heat and memory when someone you love begins to talk about a time long ago. The old rod sits on a peg in my study now, its handle worn smooth by a lifetime of hands that practiced slow work, its line frayed in places where I tied knots that didn't quite hold, reminders that not every moment is meant to hold, that the point is the care with which you try. I tell my grandchildren about that day, though I don't tell them how hard it is to wait and how sweet the moment of release can be. I tell them about the river's patient voice and the way a simple act, letting a small creature go, teaches more about life than a dozen loud triumphs. And when I speak of mercy, I feel a soft ache for the boy I once was, who learned to knit patience into his skin along the bank, who learned that to grow up well is to learn to listen to the water, to the people, to the quiet spaces between hearts. Now, in the quiet evenings of my own house, I hear the river not as a distant sound, but as a memory that lives in me like a living thing. The lamp glows warm on the desk. The clock ticks with a patient rhythm. And the world outside grows dimmer in the same way a shoreline softens after sunset. The memory returns not as a shout of triumph, but as a soft, steady breath, an old man's reminder that what endures is not the catch or the praise, but the way a person learns to sit still long enough to hear what truly matters. Time passes, the faces change, and the river keeps its own patient pace. But the mercy I learned that day stays with me, a quiet current running beneath every word I speak and every hand I reach out to guide a child or a neighbour. For that, I am grateful that a single afternoon by a riverbank could teach a 10-year-old boy to listen, to let go, to bear witness to the slow, steady beauty of life. And if I am lucky, I am still learning to listen, to notice,